Hi everyone. Thank you for watching our video. We are going to be going over the Appalachian Trail, what you can expect for the Appalachian Trail, and some other helpful tips. My name is Erin, or I go by Speed Goat on the trail. And my sister is on the call too. Her name is Maggie, or Riveter on the trail. We thru hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2022 together and recently completed the PCT in 2024. So we started this company called Trails Unpacked because when we were preparing for the Appalachian Trail, we would have really enjoyed having another thru hiker to talk to just to help sort through all of the information that is out there. So we came up with the idea of Trails Unpacked to have a learning opportunity and a communication opportunity where people can talk with actual thru hikers who have done the trail. And so we have workshop series that allow you to have live communication with us and talk to us about thru hiking and your questions about it. So we'll go ahead and get into the workshop. We'll be talking about some different items. We'll be reviewing start dates and what your first day on trail will look like for both SOBO and NOBOs, permits and physical prep, gear, resupply, and then budgeting on the trail.
So I'm going to kick it off talking about the big buzz for the AT for 2025, and that is the hurricane damage that happened last fall following Hurricane Helene. This is pretty unheard of for the Appalachian Trail. The AT is pretty much your guaranteed trail to do continuous footpath, and it is now experiencing segmented closures in the southern part of the trail. And these are closures that are dictated by the Forest Service, and there are many different Forest Service lands in that area. So that is why some of the closures are disjointed or for a few hundred miles and then might open and then be closed again. The ATC, or Appalachian Trail Conservancy, has a website that lists all of the closures, and it updates it pretty regularly based on what the Forest Service or NPS in some situations have there. One thing that I would just say to prepare yourself for, and this was a hard lesson for us to learn on the PCT with regards to wildfires, is that it is okay if you have to skip closed miles. It does not mean you are not a thru hiker. It doesn't mean you didn't do the trail. It is just being safe and respectful of when the trail is legally closed. So being able to mentally prepare yourself going in for that, I think, can be helpful because it's a really hard pill to swallow and is honestly, frankly, just disappointing when you're thinking about hiking, all of the almost 2,200 miles. One thing to make sure when you're looking at the closures is that it's not just about where the trail is actually closed, but when you're having to get on and off around closures, making sure there is a way to do that. Roads might be closed at the exact opening and closing parts of the trail, so you might find you have to skip larger miles. There have been some local trail maintainers from the southern section posting in some of the Facebook pages providing updates, so that is another phenomenal resource as well. So diving right in and talking about some start date expectations. We're sitting here now in January doing this workshop. So anyone planning on hiking in 2025 probably already has a good idea of their start date. So this is not to persuade anyone one way or the other over a start date. It's just to set expectations for when you're choosing to start. So what is the duration of a thru hike? The Appalachian Trail, on average, it really is true that it takes 4 to 6 months to complete. It took us 5 months and 1 day. We started the first week of March and finished the first week of August. If you do have a hard end date that is somewhere between 4 and 6 months, I would tell you that it is very doable to be able to meet that hard end date, and it's just about backtracking from when your hard end date is for starting. If you are going NOBO, that opens up a little bit more possibility about being able to start earlier in the year to meet that hard end date. One hard end date that I would keep in mind for NOBOs, though, is that Baxter State Park, which is the state park that Mount Katahdin sits in, does close Mount Katahdin during inclement weather. And they advise that most of the time they have to start doing those closures around mid-October. So you probably want to secure up your through hike to avoid getting there later and then finding out you cannot actually summit Mount Katahdin. So weather and temperature. This was something that I don't think we fully were prepared for, and that I can now say after hiking the PCT, we found the Appalachian Trail to be colder. Less snow. I think we only had a couple sprinkles of snow on us during our time there, but overall, Georgia was pretty cold. As I mentioned, we started the beginning of the beginning of March, and for that first 3 to 4 weeks, it was pretty regularly under freezing temperatures. Our gear was fine for that. I would not say we were horribly uncomfortable, but just making sure that we were prepared for that. So any pre-April NOBOs, just know that that southern section is going to be cold. SOBOs, you're going to face the same cold weather when you hit southern part of the trail in October and November. I would say that those temperatures are, probably going to rival each other for those pre-April NOBOs. The Mid-Atlantic, most people will be there through June and August, and that is going to be pretty humid. So we actually did not use sun shirts on the Appalachian Trail. We just went with t-shirts because we found the sun shirts would trap a lot of that humid air to you. You were in tree cover enough that sun protection wasn't something we were worried about, just the humidity and trying to get any breeze across your skin. If you do finish by October 15th, I will say that you can expect pretty mild weather. You're not really in fear of any snow if you are going NOBO. And then the last big thing that affects when people decide to start the trail is fellow hikers. The bubble is almost used like the boogeyman, and it is referring to the main grouping of hikers. And you typically see this at the beginning of trail when everyone is starting around the same time. However, bubbles naturally just kind of dissipate, and they can bottle up for any number of reasons once trail has already started. If there's a big storm and everyone's coming out of town at the same time, but bubbles do disperse. So even if you do find yourself in a large bubble of hikers, it is not going to stay that way over 4 to 5 days. It will naturally kind of, as people fall into their hiking rhythms. The earlier you start, the less crowded it will be. However, the ATC does on their website have a voluntary registration where you can say the day that you are intending to start, and they will tell you the totals of how many people are planning to start that day so you can have an idea. Do not let yourself be dissuaded, though, if you see a high number. The day that we started, which was the first Saturday in March, there were between 50 and 60 people registered to start that same day. We started hiking around 10 a.m. and did not see any other thru hikers. So it fluctuates a lot. I wouldn't take it as the gospel, but it is helpful to have that. That first weekend in March is also AT Gateways, which is run by the Georgia Appalachian Trail Club, which is really nice. There's a lot of camaraderie. A lot of previous thru hikers come out, Forest Service is there, and it can just be, if you're nervous about starting trail and about potentially starting it alone, it can be a great way to meet other hikers and kind of dip your toes in the water. And kind of the last thing I'll say about a crowded trail is that I have never met a hiker get off trail because it has been too crowded. However, I have heard people get off trail because they were lonely. So just know that no matter how many people are out there, you can choose to be around them or not. The woods is massive. It will never run out of camping options. So thinking about day one. First, I'm going to go over for a NOBO day one, and then I will talk about a SOBO day one. NOBO day one, you're looking at Springer Mountain. That is the official start of the Appalachian Trail. However, most people start at Amicalola State Park, and this is where the approach trail starts, which is a little over between 7 and 8 miles up to Springer Mountain. Unfortunately, it is all uphill. But the road up to Springer Mountain is dirt and narrow and frequently closes. While the road into Amicalola State Park is paved, it's easier access. There is a lodge with a restaurant and everything there, so it just makes it naturally a better starting point. We stayed at Amicalola Lodge the night before we started. The rooms can be a little pricey, about $250 a room, but we split it with 4 people to help bring the cost down. The rooms do fill up really fast, especially during AT season. So if you know that this is something you're interested in, I highly, highly recommend booking your room as soon as possible. Getting out to Amicalola, though, your closest airport is going to be the Atlanta airport. And the Georgia AT Trail Club, on their website, they have a list of shuttle providers who they recommend with names and contact information and things like that, because a shuttle is your best option to get there from an airport. And then lastly, bag tags. You can see one on my pack behind me. It is a colored bag tag for every class year that the Forest Service hands out, and they number it for what number you are starting in that direction. And it's just a really fun way to identify other thru hikers out there. And so Forest Service is down there by the arch, which is at Amicalola, handing out the bag tags and getting that kind of information. And again, just a really great meeting point for other thru hikers. So I highly recommend starting down at Amicalola and, if possible, staying at the lodge the night before. For our SOBOs, you are going to be starting at Baxter State Park. And unfortunately, it's a little bit more complicated here than at the southern terminus. You cannot stay within Baxter State Park at the AT shelter there. They reserve that for NOBOs only. So if you want to stay in Baxter State Park itself, you need to book a spot at one of their official campsites. And these are like the campgrounds that have RVs and like tents and things like that. Those do fill up very quickly. They're nearly impossible to get at different points in the summer. So again, if you know that you want to stay in the park, if you want to camp in the park, make sure to book that campsite in advance. A lot of people will stay at the Appalachian Trail Lodge, which is outside of Baxter State Park, and caters a lot to thru hikers and provides shuttle and lodging into Baxter State Park. So it is very common that you stay there. They shuttle you into Baxter, you hike Katahdin, you come back down, you go potentially back to them for the night, and then come back out to trail and finish the rest of it. Because remember, you have to go up and down Katahdin. So that up is the bonus miles there. That's your approach trail. Otherwise, you cannot disperse camp in Baxter State Park. So it is 17 miles from the top of Katahdin out via the AT to the park boundary for you to tent. So that would just make a very long day. So you're either going to reserve a campsite or you're going to leave and go back to the lodge. You can stay at Millinocket if you want and book like an Airbnb or a private hotel. That is the biggest closest town for you.
Yep. And one thing to add on both of these, for your first day, just overall stay flexible, especially with camping and things like that. You want to go into it with a semi-plan, but allow for those things to change.
So permits. You do not need a permit to hike the Appalachian Trail. However, there are 3 parks that require permits when you are hiking through them. And this is for if you are camping within those park boundaries. And the first one is going to be, if you're going NOBO, the first one is going to be the Smoky Mountains. It's valid for 38 days from when you get it, and it has to be printed. So if you are going NOBO, I highly recommend get the permit like the day before you start and print it and take it with you. Otherwise, you're going to be in town searching for a printer, which is kind of hard to come by these days. So you have plenty of time from when you start trail to entering the Smoky Mountains. It's within the first 200 miles. So definitely recommend getting that permit, printing it, and taking it with you when you get started. There is a $40 fee for that. The next one is Shenandoah National Park, which is in Virginia. And this permit used to be a self-service free permit. I believe starting last year, they switched to this online paid model. So if you've seen older blog posts or things talking about the Shenandoah permit, know that it might be outdated. So this new permit system, you can only do online. You can only purchase it online. So you cannot enter the park and expect to be able to purchase it at a ranger station. You get it 90 days before entering it, and they do accept a virtual copy, which makes it really nice when you get cell signal when you're close to the park. You can go ahead and purchase it. It's $15, and then you have it on your phone. And then lastly, or your first one, if you are a SOBO, is the Baxter State Park permit. And you will get it from the ranger station. You go right by the ranger station and they will issue you a permit. It's actually really cool. It's like a plastic little, almost like name tag badge kind of thing that lists you as a thru hiker, and can be a nice keepsake if you're okay with the wait.
Okay, so I know one thing that people fear on trail is being in physical fitness or physical form for through hiking, and also if they're going to be able to finish the through hike either without completely destroying their bodies, or even complete it within the time frame. So like Riveter said, usually people through hike the Appalachian Trail in 4 to 6 months. It took us 5 months to complete it, and that was with even taking a short family vacation in the middle of it. And we felt like the pace that we went at was comfortable and didn't feel like we were having to push miles every single day and, push to get to Maine. So I would say it is definitely reasonable that you are going to complete the through hike within 4 to 6 months. Now, beginning the trail, I know a lot of people, when we through hiked, were very specific about the amount of miles that they were going to hike. So they started off at 8 miles, and then after a week progressed to 10, and after that week progressed to 12. And I don't think that it's necessary that you have to be that precise about the miles that you're going to hike in order to not burn yourself out. I think it puts way too much pressure on you. I think it's more about listening to your body, and knowing that in any training program that you would do, you're going to start slow and you're going to build. Your trail legs will come, your speed will come, the amount of miles that you'll do in a day will come. Trail legs typically, I would say, kick in around 3-ish weeks, but know that you'll continue to get stronger the more that you hike. So like I said, overall, you want to listen to your body. And this is where physical training prior to trail can come in. So if you're active in your everyday life, you may have a better understanding of how your body feels after a long workout and the uncomfortabilities of a strenuous activity. So not only are you going to be probably a little bit stronger, you might be able to hike a little bit faster, a little bit further at the beginning of trail, but you'll be better at gauging what the difference is between feeling sore and then an injury. So keeping that in mind too as you prepare. Now, something that will help you on trail and help you not feel like your body is breaking down as you're hiking is going to be to practice some recovery methods. So the first thing is making sure that you're getting plenty of sleep. And you can try to prepare for this a little bit before you go on trail by trying out some of your sleep gear. So this might mean that you are putting out your air pad or the accordion pad and seeing how you sleep on it. See if it's comfortable for you. If you're a side sleeper, are you comfortable on the pad that you have? Also, trying out your pillow. I know a lot of people will use a stuff sack pillow with clothes in order to save weight. But that might not always be the most comfortable or more realistic for you. So try those items out. The next thing is to add in light stretching throughout your day, especially if you're going to take like extended breaks. We would usually take like an hour or 2 long lunch. So if we did that we would stretch then, and then even in the evening time before we go to bed. We weren't always the best about it, but it definitely helps with the hiker hobble. And then lastly is going to be nutrition. I know the confines of a thru hiker diet. You're eating Snicker bars, Pop Tarts, Hostess, donuts. But if anything, just make sure that you're getting in a high calorie and high protein meal at dinner time. That is going to help your body recover overnight so that you can wake up feeling good in the morning. And something on here on this slide that we mentioned is slack packing. So know that that is an option for some of the areas that might be a little bit more challenging. Specifically in the White Mountains, this is a very common thing to do. There are a lot of hostels that will have this as an option. They'll come get you from trail. You can leave your stuff. They'll take you to trail, pick you up. So just see what's out there. A lot of hostels have this available.
And if you have not heard the term slack packing before, it is where you are still hiking, but you are not doing it with a full pack. So you might leave most of your gear, namely your sleep system, behind, and maybe only carry, the food that you're going to eat that day and the water that you're going to have. And having that weight off of your back is going to allow you to do more miles and to do them quicker.
So gear, I know everybody is crazy about the gear. We'll give a couple of recommendations of specific brands we enjoyed, but overall this is going to be more of a general guide of things that you should have in your pack. So like Riveter said, the southern terminus is in Georgia, and just because it's in the south does not mean it is going to be hot. It is very cold, especially if you're starting in February or March. And then on the opposite side for SOBOs, ending in October, November, expect that it is going to be cold. So you are really going to want to have layers. Having a short sleeve shirt as a base layer while you're hiking, a breathable mid layer that you can either wear while you're hiking or wear when you get to camp, and then a puffy. Other things that you might have with you are gloves, a hat, thermals for sleeping. And those items can be either sent to you on trail, or you can send them home once it starts getting consistently warm out. That way you don't have to carry the weight of those things. Now, when it comes to sleeping, I know a lot of people are afraid of being cold while they're sleeping. We carried a 20-degree quilt, and we found that that was comfortable for the entire trail. Now, we did combine this with a sleeping bag liner. I think it was like a 10 or 15 degree sleeping bag liner. And we felt like that was comfortable enough for those colder sections. And then we sent that back home along with our other cold weather gear once it started getting warmer out. Now, some people might decide to carry two different quilts. They might do like a 0 to 10 degree for the colder sections, and then switch out to like a 40 or 50 degree once it starts getting warmer. Our decision was mainly just based on money. We didn't want to have to buy two different bags, so we just had the one and then supplemented it with a sleeping bag liner. Now, with that being said, if you do decide to do the two different bags, if you get a 0 to 10 degree, I don't think that you need a sleeping bag liner combined with that. I think you will feel comfortable with just that degree quilt. Now, something that you can do to help you stay warm is making sure that your sleeping pad has a high R value. And you should not underestimate the value of this. Make sure that your sleeping pad is insulated. A sleeping pad that has an R value between 4.5 to 7 is going to be kind of the sweet spot. And that might help you also determine what type of bag you're going to get or what degree bag that you want to have. And then don't forget, if you are wearing thermals, so sleepwear thermals, this is going to add a layer of warmth too. So to plug some brands here, we really like Enlightened Equipment for both the quilts and the puffy. We can't speak highly enough about them. For thermal sleepwear, we went with Cuddle Duds, which you can find at like Sam's Club. You can find them at Walmart or Target. Super cheap thermals. They get the job done, and they are fairly lightweight. Lastly on this slide is electronics. So for a battery bank, a lot of people will carry this to charge their items that need to be charged. And we would recommend having at least a 10,000 milliamp battery. Now this will get you 2 to 3 phone charges depending on what type of phone you have. Now one thing with this is consider the items that you have that have to be charged. So we had items in our pack that we had kind of switched out that did not have to be charged. So we had wired headphones and like Casio little like digital watches. And those choices were primarily so that we didn't have additional things to charge or use our battery bank with. If you do have multiple items that have to be charged, you might want to consider what milliamp battery that you would like. For the most part, you'll be in town every 3 to 4 days. So I think there is enough charging options. Now, charging ports. This is going to be the actual item that goes or the port that goes into the wall. I would say have a charging port that has at least 2 different ports in it. That way you can charge multiple things at a time. And then make sure one of those ports has PD or power delivery charging. This is going to allow your items to charge at a faster rate. There's nothing worse than having to sit at a gas station just to charge a phone. So if it has power delivery, it is going to go a lot faster. That'll also help your battery bank because those things charge slow. It can take hours for those to charge to completion because they have so much power in them. So that PD power will be helpful. So rain. Rain gets its own slide. I know everybody hears about the Appalachian Trail and how rainy it is. So you can expect that it's going to rain at least 1 to 3 days a week on the trail. Check for weather updates daily. And we specifically liked using atweather.org for forecasts. This gives you the forecast of what the weather is going to be like at specific shelters versus just down in towns. Sometimes what is going down in the valleys of the towns is different than what's actually up on the mountaintops. Now, when you're looking at rain gear, remember on the Appalachian Trail that it is likely going to be either a torrential downpour or steady rain for hours. It's not just a little light mist. No gear, in my opinion, can withstand that amount of rain before wetting through. Possibly besides Dyneema. Everything else seems to just completely give way at some point. My recommendation is to skip spending a ton of money on a rain jacket. Either opt for Frog Togs or a cheap disposable poncho similar to the one that I'm wearing in this picture here. In the winter months, so that being like February and March and October for SOBOers, consider having rain pants, but again, invest in a very cheap pair. Even though I feel like rain gear is likely going to wet through, it's especially important to stay as dry as possible in the colder months. And that's just because you run the risk of hypothermia. Other gear to have for the rain would be a pack cover. So you can kind of see it in my picture here in the orange. And then also a pack liner, even if it's just like a trash bag that you're using. And that's just to help the contents of your bag stay dry, especially if you have a down quilt. You want that to stay dry. But the same thing that I said about the hypothermia, down, when it gets wet, it takes a long time for it to dry out. If it's cold and your quilt is wet, you run the risk of hypothermia. So making sure those contents of your bag can stay dry. Now, once it starts getting consistently warm out, I would ditch the rain gear entirely. Besides the pack cover and the pack liner, I would ditch the rain pants and the rain jacket. A lot of times in the summer months, if you wear your rain gear, condensation is just going to build up underneath from your heat. You're just going to be soaked from sweat. And in my opinion, if you're soaked from sweat, I might as well just be soaked from rain. So ditch those items. Lastly, keep one pair of socks dry. You will thank yourself. Your feet will thank you. At nighttime, try to keep a pair of socks that you can sleep in that are going to stay dry. And that can either be socks or it can even be our preferred alternative, which is the Enlightened Equipment booties. Your feet are going to be your main mode of transportation, so keep them happy. Now, this might mean that if you hiked all day in the rain and your socks are completely wet, that you are putting back on those wet socks the next day to hike in. If that means that you have one pair of dry socks, that is what it is. Now, part of your gear might include food storage. This slide kind of outlines the 3 main food storage techniques people might use. Now, bear canisters and sacks are a more secure way and might give you more peace of mind, but they do come at an increased weight and cost. The most common food storage technique we saw was using just a lightweight food bag and then hanging a bear line, similar to the one in this picture here. However, it is not uncommon to see thru hikers sleeping with their food when a bear box or bear line is not already available. And you'll see this as you get further into your hike, that people will start sleeping with their food. This is something that we're not endorsing, but if you decide to sleep with your food, your main concern at this point is going to become critters, like other mice, squirrels, mainly mice though. We had our food bags chewed a couple of times, even in a bear hang, by mice, and it wasn't even at shelters. It can be just even if you are dispersed camping. One thing to keep in mind with this is, it sucks if you get your food eaten, but it sucks more if you have expensive gear chewed through. So some ways to help with that. Some people will decide to do a critter hang. And this is where they hang their food outside their tent just high enough so that mice can't get to it. Obviously, other animals like a bear would be able to get to it, but this would make it high enough so that a critter wouldn't be able to. If you decide to sleep outright with your food in your tent, a lot of people will barricade it inside their tent with them, or they'll sleep with it kind of closer to their head. That way you can hear if a critter is trying to chew through the tent to get into your food.
And I will provide a brand recommendation here. Hilltop Packs, their food bags specifically come with a odor lining to it to make your food bag not smell as much for critters. And we did notice a difference in this on the PCT. I have a Hilltop Pack food bag, and Speed Goat here did not. And her food bag was chewed through right next to mine, and mine was left alone.
Yeah.
So their bags are phenomenal. They hold up really well. They're strong. And I really do feel like the odor resistant lining helps.
Yeah. And a fun thing about them, they let you customize it too. So you can put sometimes like your own pictures on the bag, which is pretty cool. It also helps with being able to recognize your own bag, especially when you start down in Georgia. There are a lot of people who are going to be hanging their food bag. So you want to do something to distinguish your food bag from other people's, so that you're not taking down a bear hang and you're like, oh, this actually is not my food.
We tied small red ribbons on ours because even outside of bear hangs, if there's a bear box, you'd be surprised how many people buy the exact same stuffed sacks.
Yeah, having something on there that just distinguishes it to you. And kind of the same thing even with the battery banks and charging ports. We put stickers on those items That way, if they were plugged in, it never got confused with somebody else's.
Mm-hmm. All right, so resupply. After or just as frequently as physical fitness, this is the thing most people have concerns about. And honestly, was the thing we were most concerned about when we started through hiking. And I'm just going to throw this out here, and it's an uncomfortable truth, is that you cannot plan out all of your resupply points for a through hike before you start a through hike. It is nearly impossible. Your hiking style, your hiking speed, your preferences are going to change, and you won't know that sitting here right now. So while you might have a lot of nervous energy and you want to be doing something, you want to be planning, you want to be getting ready, it is going to be way more difficult and stressful to try and find all of those points right now. With resupplying, it is an art and it is a science, and you're going to be thinking only 2 to 5 days at a time, which is resupply to resupply, because at that point, the only thing that matters is how much food you need to have on you at that moment. So, for the Appalachian Trail, our average resupply was 2 to 4 days. Honestly, anything over, I would say 5 days, is going to have a significant cost with weight. And you are going to feel it, and you will actually hike slower carrying that amount of weight. And I think ultimately be in more physical discomfort with that much weight versus doing a few more extra miles every day to bring down that resupply carry. The longer carries we had were in the White Mountains and in the 100-mile wilderness. And that was not because they had to be longer carries. There were options in both of those scenarios to bring down the resupply time. They were just inconvenient. And so we decided to do closer to 5 day carries to not have to come out into town. And you will find using Far Out and talking to other thru hikers what your options are and be able to make those calls when you get there for what you're comfortable with. The AT goes through many towns, and here, when a thru hiker says town, it could be anything from a full-fledged city to a gas station. And like literally only a gas station. So when you hear someone say town, just keep that in mind. Lower those expectations a little bit, because sometimes it might just be one store. There are many times you will be resupplying at a gas station, and I'm here to tell you it is 100% doable and sometimes even preferred. When you're in a big grocery store and you're only resupplying for 2 days, you're having to buy everything in big boxes, and you're either throwing half of that away or carrying it, which defeats the point of a 2 day resupply. Whereas places like gas stations, you can buy all of the bars individually. So when you see that it is not a full-size grocery store, don't immediately panic that it's not a good resupply point. There are towns that are not directly on trail, and you will have to take a car to get there. We never had further than a 30-minute car ride, so the towns are very accessible from trail. Our primary form of transportation in the situations was hitchhiking. And I will say we were nervous to do it as two young females. Neither of us had hitchhiked before through hiking. And when we got on trail, this was our introduction to it, and it actually works. I was shocked by that. I've only seen hitchhiking in movies. And we never felt uncomfortable. We always had a good time hitchhiking, and we were always able to depend on hitching as our form to getting into trail. That being said, please do not feel like you have to do it if you are uncomfortable with it. There is a very strong Trail Angel network on the AT and a lot of private shuttle operators, so those will have a charge associated with it, all of which you can find on Far Out. So when you see road crossing icons, especially road crossing icons that go into town, people will leave comments with names of shuttles, with names of trail angels, and they will also provide typically with it what their experience has been. So either, hey, don't ride with this person, or this person was phenomenal, give them a call, give them a text, etc. For the most part, cell signal was actually pretty good on the AT. There were some spots where it wasn't phenomenal, but just be aware that if you want to use Trail Angels or a shuttle, you might have to set it up in advance if you're unsure if there will be cell signal at the trailhead itself. So the next big question is resupply boxes, and do you need to prepare those before trail? And I'm here to say something that might be controversial, but we do not believe it is necessary to send food only resupply packages. With two kind of clarifications here. One, if you don't have a dietary restriction, if you are vegan or gluten free, or if you can't have dairy, 100%, it's going to be even more limiting on trail, especially being vegan. So at that point, you might have to think through that. If you don't have dietary restrictions, though, you will not have troubles resupplying. And I do specify food only. If you are sending yourself shoes, contacts, things like that, there's no other way to get them, especially medications. And that is not uncommon for people to send themselves boxes to receive things that are not food items. We have a blog post that I will link here and in the description that goes over how to do that and how to send those boxes. There are some places that do have a limited selection, and people will post that pretty regularly on Far Out. But in 2 through hikes, I have never been at a place that was so limited that we could not resupply. So on the Appalachian Trail, we sent ourselves 5 resupply boxes that we had prepped ahead of time. And our biggest reason for doing that was we thought we would save money by buying some things in bulk on Amazon, like nicer things, like olive oil packets, and then we could get them at different points on trail. Ended up putting half of it in a hiker box because we sent way too much of it because we didn't know what we were doing when we packed the boxes, or we just were not vibing it at that point. So if you do want to send yourself boxes, I recommend doing it from trail. So if you are in a town, that might have a big grocery store, a big post office, and you know that you're going to be coming to the next town or the town after that or so forth, that's going to have a limited resupply, you can send yourself a box right there. USPS, their flat rate boxes have a 2-day shipping time. So you have that ability to do it, and then you know exactly how much food to send and exactly what food to send. So talking about the other form of resupply, which is your shoe resupply. Trail runners are the most common shoe worn for through hiking, and these are essentially tennis shoes with thicker tread to give you traction. And they normally have a life of about 500 miles. You can use insoles to help prolong their life, but 500 miles is about the normal amount. If you do decide to go with a full hiking boot, you have closer to 1,000 miles before you might think about switching them out. And our recommendation for shoe resupply is if you have a shoe that you know you really like and is going to work for you, it might be tempting to order them all now. You're probably going to go through 4 to 5 pairs of shoes. But I would recommend not ordering all of your shoes pre-trail. It is very common for hiker feet to spread. I actually went up a whole shoe size on both through hikes that I did. So I could not wear the starting shoe that I had for either of those 2 trails. There are a lot of gear stores on the AT who sell trail runners, but the most common ones the ones that you can bank on seeing in gear stores are going to be Ultras and Hokas. So what do we ultimately recommend for getting your shoes? We recommend ordering shoes and having them delivered to you on trail. It ensures you get the exact shoe you want in the exact size you want, because you just never know with gear stores. Speedgoat here wears a wide and can almost never find a wide shoe on trail at a gear shop. Where gear stores can be really helpful with shoes, especially when you're first beginning the trail, is if you're having a lot of foot pain and you're not sure what to do, how to fix it, what your shoe problem is, you can go into a gear store and try on shoes there. But if you know your shoe, I would really recommend just ordering it straight to trail. And you can order it 2 different ways. You can have it sent USPS general delivery that is sent to a post office, which they hold for you. But just remember, if you use general delivery, it has to be sent USPS. So if you don't get to choose a shipping carrier, if you don't know if it's being sent UPS or USPS, I would err on the side of caution and send to a hostel or to a hotel, just to make sure it gets there. Again, link to our blog post on this and how to find these private businesses that do accept hiker packages.
Yep. And this goes for not only shoes, but also if you are sending yourself food or any medications or anything like that too. Um, Whether or not you're going to use general delivery or send to a hostel or something like that.
So I'm not going to take a lot of time talking about this. This is mainly just an informational slide. So go ahead and pause the video here, or go ahead and take a picture or a screen capture. This is the NOBO recommendations for a shoe resupply based on every 500 miles. So that you can have an idea if there will be gear stores there, or if that would be the place you can think about, mentally prepare for where you are going to be sending your shoes and when you would then like to order them. So one quick second for our NOBOs.
Yep. And one thing here, when you are ordering your shoes, so every 500 miles, I think we normally would order our shoes maybe like a week or 2 weeks out from when we were going to get to that place. So it almost feels like every couple of weeks you're ordering new shoes or picking up shoes. Um,
And then for our SOBOs, the same thing. I will say generally in the northern section of the Appalachian Trail, there are fewer gear stores. They are all the larger ones are all in the south. And so if you're starting SOBO, there are, I think, less options right up there to go into gear stores to try and figure out shoes if that is what you're looking to do. But you can bank on it in the southern part of the trail. So I'm going to touch on the first resupplies because, as I mentioned, you don't want to plan out your entire through hike for resupplies, but you do when you start, you need to know how much food to take with you. So you do need to know at least your first one, and it can be helpful to know your, second or third one as well, just so that you're able to relax and enjoy and be flexible for that first little part and not panicking or scrambling trying to figure out what to do. So for our NOBOs, your first resupply is going to be Neal's Gap, which is right on trail. You do not have to you have to take like 4 steps off trail. And they are a full outfitter that has a ton of gear. And then they also have full resupply options. I mean, their whole existence is for through hikers. You can send a package here if you want. They do have a pickup fee associated with it. And it seems like on Far Out, the biggest reason that people send a package here is because they say that the food can be costly. However, the cost of the package, of like mailing the package, and of the pickup fee, I think negates how much the food costs. Like you're never going to be spending that much more on food than what the shipping cost was. So if I were you, I would think about getting my first resupply at Neal's Gap. So when you're starting thinking about 40 miles, how many days is it going to take you to go 40 miles? Your second resupply, we have blank here because you have a couple different options and it depends how little you want food that you want to carry. Hiawassee is going to be your next resupply point, and then after that is Franklin. Hiawassee is very close though, so you could be looking as short as a 1 to 2 day resupply, which some people just don't want to take the time that early on in trail to get off of trail to go into town. So you might be looking at Franklin, North Carolina at that point, which is going to be further out. But that being said, if you are doing short mile days, that could make for a very long resupply. So just keeping that in mind.
yeah. And Franklin is around mile 109.6. So it's going to be like 78-ish miles from Neal's Gap. I will say Franklin is a cute little town, mountain town. It is a nice stop in. They have a brewery and some other little stores and stuff like that. So it is a nice place to go into.
Mm-hmm. For our SOBOs, your first place is going to be Shaw's because you are going straight into the 100-mile wilderness. This is in Munson, Maine. We did hitch there from a trail. It's a very easy. And Shaw's, similar to Neal's Gap, pretty much caters exclusively to through hikers. And so they have a huge like through hiker centered resupply. Like you can buy everything individually. It's like all of like the best electrolytes and the best snacks. So I definitely cannot hype up their resupply enough. It is a significant time to carry food starting out before you have trail legs. They will do drops in the 100-mile wilderness. I think 100-mile wilderness is a little bit of a misnomer. There are plenty of roads, like dirt roads, that you will cross. And so if you look on their website, you can set up a resupply drop with them ahead of time so that you can bring down that carry for yourself. After Shaw's, you're looking at Stratton, which would be about 75 miles from there. A grocery store and a deli. We always love getting hot food. Hot food, I mean, it could be a sandwich. It doesn't literally have to be hot. It's just food that has not been in a backpack, might be the way I describe that. So it is a good stop with plenty of options for your resupply from there.
Yeah. And like Riveter said, so the 100-mile wilderness, you will come up to a lot of dirt road crossings and stuff. And you will see other people there who are like day hiking throughout. I wouldn't count on that though as a means to get in and out, to hitch in and out. So if you do need food within that, go ahead and set it up with Shaw's. So Riveter kind of touched on this earlier. Getting in and out of towns, you do not have to hitch if you do not want to. There are plenty of trail angels, shuttles, and then even public transportation services inside of the towns that you can get around, getting in and out of town and around town fairly easily. Hitching, though, is a common mode of transportation and can sometimes be a little bit more convenient than setting up a ride with a trail angel. We have a couple of tips about hitching that will help you secure a ride a little bit, hopefully faster. So one thing is to smile and to wave as a car is coming up and even as they're passing you. We had numerous people who turned back around and who picked us up, and they wouldn't have done that if we flicked them off as they passed us and didn't pick us up. So just look nice. Next is look as clean as you can, and don't wear rain gear unless it's actively raining. Think about how you would want to pick somebody else up in your vehicle. If they looked excessively dirty or they looked sopping wet, you might hesitate about picking them up. So try to display yourself in that same fashion. Unlike Riveter in this picture, don't wear sunglasses or things that are going to constrict your face. It just allows you to look more visible. And then lastly is make sure that your pack is visible. This might even mean you taking your pack off and putting it in front of you. We had a lot of people who had picked us up who had never picked up hitchhikers before, but they picked us up because we looked like backpackers or thru hikers and not a stereotypical hitchhiker. Now, with that being said, if somebody pulls over and you're not feeling comfortable about that hitch, you do not have to get in the car. You do not owe anybody anything. You do not owe them to get in the car if they pull over for you if you don't feel comfortable. If that does happen, you can always lie, say that you forgot that you left something back on trail and it's going to take you a couple hours to go get it. You can decline the ride, or you don't even have to say anything at all. You can just run back into trail. Nobody's really going to follow you back onto trail to give you a free ride. So just know that you don't have to get into the car. And ultimately, if you want to hitch, but you're not comfortable doing it alone, there are plenty of hikers that go into town and come out of town within the same kind of bubble. So you can always ask somebody to hitch with you in or out of town. We had done that with other people asking to hitch with them, or even had people who had asked to hitch with us. And people are very friendly on the trail. Now coming to budget, and this is more focusing on budget once you are on trail. There are going to be three main things that you'll likely spend money on. The first thing is going to be food. So resupplying, an average 3-day resupply costs us about $50 to $60. Now that can fluctuate depending on what you're buying. Larger towns will likely have a cheaper option. They might have a Walmart or something like that. The more convenient resupplies might be a little bit more expensive, but keep in mind, like Riveter has said, um, that sending yourself food on trail doesn't always mean that it will be cheaper once you add in the cost of shipping or even picking up the package. Next is going to be town days, and specifically zeroing. Um, so when you zero, typically you have a cost associated with hotels or staying in hostels, usually for 2 nights. Now you can bring down that cost by staying in a hostel and staying in a bunk room. Usually those are anywhere from like $20 to $40. If you stay in a hotel, jam as many through hikers as you can in a room. That'll help bring the cost down too. One thing that we kind of got into the habit of doing was taking almost like this mock kind of zero, where we would hike as close to trail as we could, stay that night, the next morning get up, or next to a road or something like that, go into town, stay a night in a hostel or a hotel, and then go back out the next day. So our body was still getting the rest and recovery of a zero because we weren't hiking a lot that day that we went into town, but we didn't have that added expense of an extra town stay or that night. And also know that if you stay in town, if you're staying longer, usually, you're eating out more. There's more costs associated to that. And then the more zeros you take, the longer your through hike is likely going to be. So just keep that in mind too. The longer that you're out here, the longer, the more that you're probably spending. And then the third thing that you'll likely spend money on is gear replacement. Through hiking is hard on gear. It pushes stuff to its limits, and it also just pushes it to its natural lifespan. So for your shoes and for socks, those are things that you're going to be switching out. Water filters are also something that you might consider switching out. And a lot of times you're not going to use your water filter till the end of its life. It's more that it just becomes excruciatingly painful to sit there and filter it. No matter how well you back flush the water filters, they always slow down. And if you have patience like I do, which is like none, you are not going to want to spend 10 minutes filtering a liter of water. So that might be something that you also replace. And then there's just going to be things that might fail. Your air pad might pop. There might be things that just happen that you have to replace.
And some people have asked about our recommendations on water filters. We are both fans of Sawyer and getting the full size Sawyer, not the mini and not the micro. The weight of it is very negligible, but the power of the full size Sawyer is pretty high. I think Be Free would be fine for the Appalachian Trail. Many people have used Be Free and have had a positive experience. Speedgoat did not have a positive experience with the Be Free. So we are Sawyer people, but that does not mean that it is your only option. And then one other note I'm going to make about budget for food, and especially for resupply food, is that the dehydrated backpacking meals are pretty expensive. You're looking at $10 to $15. And just know, especially if it's your first time backpacking, that is not the only backpacking food available. There are a lot of instant foods that you can buy in a regular grocery store that are going to be significantly cheaper. We also have some blog posts that I will link here that kind of give you some ideas of those recipes and are going to be $3 to $4 instead of 14 to 15.
So like Riveter said, we have a lot of information on our Trails Unpacked page, our website. So please check that out. We have a whole bunch of blogs and then also videos available. So check those resources out.
Thanks for spending this hour with us, and hope you learned something and feel better prepared for your Appalachian Trail thru hike.